Hi there YouTube, this is Eugene from Luger, and today we're going to be going over a 45 Luger development history, and going to show some of our 45 models to you guys. History of Lugers in general started with Borghardt design, with a Borghardt carabine, with a very cumbersome pistol. Luger stepped in, and together with Borghardt they designed the Luger that saw light in 1900. The earlier models had features on them that were not very user-friendly. Later in 1902, the gun was changed a little bit, and now in 1908 was adopted in German Army. But prior to that, there was a lot of development and a lot of history of the gun prior to German adoption. Not a lot of people know, but Luger at the time was one of the most advanced pistols in the world, and many European countries adopted it early in 1900, in 1902, 1903. There was Switzerland, there was Dutch, there was Russia, Mexico tried to adopt it even, and there was a slew of different countries in Europe that wanted it very badly. In the early 1900s, US Army wanted to adopt a semi-automatic pistol as well. And they trialed, earlier in the century, 1901, they trialed a couple of smaller caliber pistols. The Luger in .30 caliber was included. As you all know, there is a 1900 model US Army trials. There was a quite significant number of them present in the Army. It went through field trials. There was also Mauser broom handle that also was in a part of that test trial. It had a fixed sight, it had 5-inch barrel, it looks very unique, and we'll review that later on the videos because I have one in my collection. In 1902, when the first trials were happening, the first adoption was cavalry. Cavalry adoption with .30 caliber Luger didn't work all that really well. .30 caliber bullet was very small. The idea of cavalry was to be able to stop horses with a single shot. It didn't quite happen with a .30 caliber, so they went back to Luger, George Luger, and asked him if there's anything he can do. And at 1902, he designed a new cartridge. He took his bottleneck .30 caliber bullet, opened up the case, and created 9mm Luger as we know it today. He also created a pistol that would work with the gun, with the bullet. It was a 1902, what we know today as a fat barrel gun, because he was afraid that the 9mm pressures were high. He created a pistol with very fat, round-looking barrel that supposedly was needed to help the pressures of a higher standard. US Army cavalry tried it. It was better, but it wasn't good enough. And later on, it was decided to 45 caliber adoption was necessary, and they announced the trials that were held in 1907. There were 11 pistols present, there were revolvers and there were pistols present, 8 manufacturers total. There was a Borghardt, there was Savage, there was Colt, there was a Luger as well. Colt at the time in 1907 was not the 1911 that we know today. It was in fact a 1905 model that had 2 links instead of 1 and parallel, and the barrel moved parallel to the ground, to the frame when the gun cycled. It was an interesting design of Browning, but eventually it was redesigned due to durability issues. In the US Army trials, the 1907 trials, Luger was allowed, only one of the inventors was allowed to shoot his guns in front of the board. The rest of the guns were shot by the board members themselves. He brought 2 Lugers into the trials. There were endurance tests, and there were accuracy tests, and there was a salt test, as they call it. During the endurance tests, Luger actually was a first runner-up. There was 500 rounds fired from every pistol. Majority of pistols failed the endurance test to the point where their trials were not continued on. 3 guns continued was the Colt, Luger, and Savage. Luger stopped about 20 sometimes during those 500 endurance tests and needed some manual intervention to continue firing. Colt, however, stopped almost 80 times. And because of that, board was leaning toward to Luger very highly, especially because it was adopted by everybody and they really wanted it. But one of the tests was a salt test where the guns were submerged in salt solution, left there for a couple of hours, and then they were taken out and hung up to dry for a day. Board returned the next day. and attempted to fire the guns without oiling or cleaning the guns at all. Luger has a very high tolerance pistol, and I did not want to fire unless it was oiled. Colt, however, continued somewhat functioning where it was manually rocked, manually operated, but it did fire. You could squeeze a couple of rounds off. After oiling, both guns shot perfectly fine, and the adoption, after the after the trial, the first board trial, the second step was a field trials. In field trials, we were supposed to have multiple pistols sent to the army to test. After field trials, the board wanted to have the gun go into the army and wanted to have multiple weapons tested in the field by the actual users, the soldiers. So there was a contract for the army of 200 units. Initially, the idea was that the Colt was the first runner-up, the Luger was the second runner-up, and they ordered 200 units from each manufacturer. One of the additional things that they ordered was actually bullets from Germany, because during the test, it was proven that Frankfurt Arsenal at the time was producing ammunition, but German ammunition that George Luger brought with him to test the Luger was in a better quality, better powders of the time in Europe. And as a result, they loaded a truckload of ammunition, 200 pistols, and there was prices assigned and the delivery dates actually pointed out. Then a couple of months passes by. It's end of 1907. World War I was on the verge of starting, and at that point, George Luger had an ongoing trials with German army. Only in German army, he was trialing a 9mm gun that he was already producing. And now tooling changes were necessary to produce that pistol. So at the end of 1907, he sends a letter to his representative in New York to say, and the letter says, I'm very sorry, but it looks like the adoption of the 45 Luger will not happen due to World War I starting, and I'm busy producing 9mm. So pretty much saying, I don't want to do this, 200 units is not going to happen, forget it, look somewhere else. And as a result, US Army decided to go with a first runner-up 1905 Colt and a third runner-up Savage. And that's what we know today. That's what the trials that happened, the field trials that happened, and also the pistol that went into it. And the 45 Lugers that George brought with him, one of these Lugers supposedly disappeared after the trials. It was destroyed, it was damaged. My guess is he probably took it back and used it for studies back in Germany. But one of the guns he brought in actually stayed behind in the US. It was shown in California Arms Museum, and it remained there for a very long time, until 1989. And if you guys follow the history of the 45 Luger, you will know that Guns and Ammo had an article about this pistol in 1989 when two guys got together, spent $1 million getting this gun out of the museum. And that was the first recorded historical sale of the 45 Luger. At the time, it was considered the most expensive pistol in the world. One of the guys who bought that gun was Mike Krauts. He is in California, and he's a gunsmith, a very talented person, comes from German descent, comes from family of people that were blacksmiths and gunsmiths. And what he did is he took an original, disassembled an original, created sketches and blueprints, and started producing the pistol in very small quantities. The first copy that he created was showcased in Guns and Ammo in 1993. So it took him almost 5 years to create the first copy. The first copy, if I remember correctly, sold for $11,000 in 1993. He made a couple of them a year, and I was already working on 9mm guns. I was already restoring pistols, and I was, a little bit later, maybe 5-7 years later in 2000, I started thinking about making the 45 myself. when I gave Mike Krauts a couple of calls, we started talking, and he wasn't ready to sell me the blueprints at that time. It took me several years of convincing Mike to sell me the blueprints, but if I remember correctly, in 2014 or 15, I went to California. We purchased the blueprints from Mike. When at the time of purchasing the blueprints, I was talking to Mike, and he mentioned that he had a couple of guns available from his last runs, and the average sale of the guns that he had was between 25 and 27,000. And those are the two guns that he had, but they were both spoken for. When I asked him why he's selling me the blueprints, finally he said, I am 79, I'm not making them anymore, good luck, by the time you get them running, I'll be dead. That was his exact words, in fact, which happened to be false because Mike is still very much so kicking around, but we already been producing guns for 4 years. It took us 2 years to produce the first pistol, and the interesting part of the history was that when we produced it, in the blueprints that he gave us, there were no magazines. The magazines that I got were the 3 mags that Mike created himself, and they were in the various stages of development. There was one magazine that was just 2 pieces, 2 parts, front and back of the mag. The second was just a plain tube. The third one had lips formed on it. We made the pistol thinking that we have a magazine to test with. And we started playing around with the gun. We could fire a couple of rounds out of it, but I couldn't consistently get a gun to feed from the magazines that were given to us. So we tried, and we tried, and it took us several months after we realized that the magazines that were produced initially for the pistol, and when I started talking to a couple of clients of Mike's and Mike himself, I realized that he was making an exact replica of the pistol that was present in the test trials. The reality of the matter is, it looks like that the cartridge that was used in the trials was not exactly the 45 ACP cartridge we know today. As a result, modern cartridge won't reliably feed on the gun. We decided to redesign the magazine so ever so slightly without modifying its appearance much, and we ended up changing the magazine dimensions to the point where the 45 ACP round started functioning in a magazine perfectly fine. It took us, however, another 3 months to fine-tune the pistol. Our first pistol, if you guys look and see, we have several pistols present today. We have our firstborn, which is surprisingly is number 4, because the number 1, 2, and 3 were stayed in the family and were created a little later than this particular pistol. This pistol, at the time of our creation process, had about 10,000 rounds fired through it, and we ended up figuring out that the gun would cycle, it would fire. If you cycle it by hand, it will cycle perfectly fine. It had no problems. But as soon as you attempted to, so basically we're gonna take the pistol, it's empty, magazine out. What would happen is if you cycle the gun by hand, it would feed the second round in the gun just perfectly fine. But if you attempted to fire the pistol, what would happen, it would fire, it would eject the round, but there would be no second round in the chamber. It took us a little bit and a slow motion camera, 1,000 shots a second, and a couple of different tries to actually realize that the gun is moving so fast and the components in the weapon are moving so fast that it wasn't enough time for the second round to come out. And we ended up looking for a manufacturer who would help us create the set of springs that would function in the gun. It didn't happen the way we hoped, because every manufacturer we went actually told us, we will gladly make you springs as long as you know what you need to make. After a little bit of research, I ended up making the springs of different settings for the gun, and it was pretty much an old school process of trial and error, and we ended up creating a spring that would work in the weapon, and we ended up having a more powerful spring used in a magazine to facilitate the feeding of the rounds. As any other Luger, the gun needs a loading tool to help help the magazine to load. This is an original tool. We also have designed our tools, which I'm trying to find. Our tool is a little bigger, helps facilitate the loading a little better. And if you were to take the magazine, as usual with any Luger, you take the magazine, take the loading tool, slide the loading tool on top of the button. It has a little hook latch on it, and you can push the magazine, follow it down very easily and load rounds one at a time. The magazine, in an ideal situation, magazine would load 7 rounds, and you could fire 7+ rounds out of the pistol. It took us almost 6 months overall after creation of the pistol to have the gun function reliably, find the right set of springs, have the gun fire, and our first string of 100 rounds without malfunction probably happened in 2017. And that's our first publication was in Guns and Ammo, February of Guns and Ammo, February of 2017, I believe, or 18, we had the first publication about the pistol. And that's when I started having calls from people that owned Mike Krause's guns, asking me, does your gun work, and can I make the other guns function? We said that we will gladly work on our pistols. If there are any problems, we would correct them and make our pistols, but I didn't want to touch anybody else's guns because we didn't know what manufacturing processes were used, what materials were used, and most importantly, magazine dimensions were different. So in today's world, we've been manufacturing a Luger for 4 years. Our first pistols, the first batch of 10 or 15 pistols, when the guys got them, and we had reports of gun being very ammunition sensitive. And after we realized that that's going on, and a couple of guys told us the same thing, that it would fire certain types of ammunition and then wouldn't fire the other, we went out. It was better days back then. Ammunition was available in every store. We went throughout neighboring stores, bought about, I think it was 12 different manufacturers. There were Remingtons, there were American Eagles, there were UMCs, there was all kinds of different European brands. Some boutique ammunition at the time, SIG, match grade, there was a couple of other match grade manufacturers. What Anderson that really happened, really we are thankful for, we got contacted by one of the writers, and that's the writer who actually ended up writing the article in Gun Digest. He suggested we get a ransom rest, modify it to hold the 45 Luger and run the test through a ransom, just to make sure the accuracy. We didn't expect much. We know Luger is accurate pistol by nature, but we were surprised by is how repeatedly good the gun was with certain types of ammo. So we did trial 12 different types of ammo. We ended up making small adjustments to the manufacturing process, to design of a bridge block, for to be exact, and eliminated the problem with ammo sensitivity. As any Luger, unfortunately, with any Luger, with any gun that has a high angle of grip and a high angle of the magazine, the nature of the magazine and the way it functions, it very much dependent on overall size of the ammunition. So if I were to take a regular ammo, ball ammo, 230 grain, and put it in the magazine, you will see that this type of ammunition fits well in the magazine, and we're gonna do that right now, guys. This is PMC bronze. It works really nicely. No issues of any kind. So as you can see, if you see the bullets is in one position, as it goes down through the magazine, it changes its position ever so slightly and tilts down every time it hits back and front lip. So if you decide to fire hollow point ammunition out of this magazine, if your hollow points are of the same or very close dimension to an overall dimension of the bullet, they will work just fine. But however, if they're shorter, what will happen is it will interact with front and back wall of the magazine like any round would in this design. And what will happen, the rounds start tilting, as you feel them, the rounds start tilting downwards, and eventually will jam the gun magazine. Not the gun, but it will jam the magazine up. The only way we've learned is if you wanted to absolutely have to have a hollow point in your pistol for whatever reason, the only way to reliably do that is if you stagger them up with regular rounds. You would load a standard round, put one full metal jacket, then put a hollow point in it, and then put another standard round, and then put another hollow point. And then with that in mind, when you do that, the normal standard size bullets will help guide the hollow points through the magazine. That goes for a 9mm Luger as well. They don't like hollow points, never did. But that kind of loading could actually eliminate some of the issues if you were to stagger them up with standard ammunition. So here we're going to show what we produce currently. Our production has been 4 years in the making. We had actually produced about 40 pistols, 43 to be exact, every year for the past 3 years. And there were different models. This is our standard 4 3/4 inch barrel, grip safety the same way as the original Trials pistols was, 45 caliber. We made the same pistols in 10mm as well. Then there is what we call a commander style gun, which has a 3 1/4 inch barrel, and it's one round shorter in the grip, also grip safety. This gun is our creation based on the history of baby Lugers. 45 Luger originally never existed in this particular configuration. This is our own attempt to create a target pistol. That's a 7-inch barrel. We made them in 45 and 10mm, and an adjustable rear sight that looks very similar to a Navy sight. This one right now is still in the process of being made, and it doesn't have a leaf in it, but the idea is that we'll have very small screws adjusting windage and the left to right, and windage adjustment will be inside of this. This reassembles somewhat a Smith & Wesson revolver spring leaf sights that you find on fine-tuned revolvers. These guns were designed and hopefully will gain popularity amongst sharpshooters because the gun does run a lot faster than any semi-automatic right now, especially 45s. Because if you look at 1911s, they do have a very high mass of moving parts. So if you take a 1911, you have, I'm going to check the chamber, it's empty. So every time the gun fires, you have a very heavy slide that goes back. So you naturally have a lift because it will kick you one way, and then when it goes back, it will kick you the other way. So you have two very high, points of impact on this pistol when it fires, and it goes pretty much for any other 45 or any other semi-automatic pistol of a Browning design. Whereas Luger, the only moving travel is about 1/4 of an inch. So the full weight of the slide barrel in the full assembly only moves that much to allow unlocking the pistol, and the rest of moving parts are much smaller. So you have 3 toggle components that, first of all, they don't move as much as the 45 any other semi-automatic does. Second of all, the weight of the moving components are about 4 times less. And because the way the toggle designed and the way the spring sits in the grip in the vertical position versus horizontal in any other pistol, when you fire the weapon, instead of the gun going up and down like any normal semi-automatic, it would actually push you back and push you down just ever so slightly. These guns are very fast because of the lighter components. They will cycle about 5 times faster than a regular 1911 would, And in my personal experience, in one attempt of us trying to take pictures and get a flight of a bullet pictured for the magazine, I was firing a baby Luger, which is short barrel, kicks a little more obviously than the longer gun, and I tried to fire 7 rounds out of it, and I was squeezing them as fast as I could in an attempt to actually help my cameraman to get the bullet in flight, which we ended up doing. And one of those attempts, I fired 7 rounds. We were outside, and I turned around to my cameraman to ask him if we caught any bullets in flight. And at that time, all 7 cases rained down on me like a brass rain. And I was surprised because I didn't expect all 7 cases to be up in the air. It gave me a couple of seconds to turn around, ask my cameraman what he captured, and only then cases came down. So they're all up in the air. Attempt to do that was in 1911, and let me know if that works. Because I'm very likely you're not going to get that kind of speed out of that pistol. And as you well know, that the Sig, Walter, Colt, if you're really quick, you can overrun the trigger on the pistol very easily. So. And many sharpshooters and many shooters that use guns in competition would tell you that yes, you can overrun the trigger and end up with a dead trigger on when the slide returns to battery. In Luger, in 45 Luger especially, it is impossible. I tried and I failed. You cannot overrun that pistol. So if you're in a competition and you need to run bullets down range fast, there's no comparison to anything else in semi-automatic. You could probably get the same speed from a revolver, but you won't in any of the semi-automatic. So, like I was saying, we have several options. The guns that we manufacture today, after 3 years of making them, we had old 3X CNC centers. We had 2 centers, and there were Haas centers, 3X, older machines. We were afraid that we're not going to succeed because, interestingly enough, in the history of 45 making, we knew that nobody really was successful in making the pistol very reliable and very user-friendly. We've been manufacturing 45 Lugers for 3 years. We made them on 3X CNC centers. We had older Haas machines. We didn't want to invest a lot of money in production because we were afraid that we're not going to succeed. Because looking at the history of development of the 45 pistol, we realized that there was John Martz, who initially took 9mm pistols, sliced them in half, welded them together, and created 45s that way. Then there was Mike Krauts, and his pistols are very high quality, very good looking guns, but we've had multiple reports of people saying that they look good, but you can't make them reliable shooters because that wasn't Mike's idea. Mike wanted to make an exact replica of an original pistol, and that's what apparently was happening. There was also, interestingly enough, another attempt when Mauser was returning back to a Luger market in the 70s and created what we know today as an original Mauser, which is in fact have nothing to do with original Mauser, to be truthful, because they used Switzerland machinery, the only Luger machinery that was available on the market in the 70s when Switzerland finally gave up using the Lugers in their army and competitions. The only standing factory of Lugers at the time was in Switzerland, and that's what Mauser purchased, and that's the ideas in the machinery. If you look and open Swiss Lugers of earlier times and original Mausers of the current, semi-current production of the 1970s, you will see very, very many similarities between them. What we found is Mauser attempted to create a 45 Luger because it was very tempting to have that on the US market. And apparently they created 5 pistols, attempted to make them functional, failed, and discarded the project. And later talking with Bob Simpson, he confirmed that fact because he had one of those 45 Mausers for sale just recently, about 6 months ago. Unfortunately, we didn't get an opportunity to buy it. Anyhow, 3 years of running production on older 3-axis CNCs. We were producing about 43, 45 pistols in the year. We made about 140 pistols total. So again, we had the commander size smaller gun, the classic pistol, of the regular size, the 4 3/4, 6.5-inch target models. We even ran 11 units in stainless, which was very hard to do, and we don't attempt to do it again, to be honest with you guys. And each pistol is assembled by hand, fitted by hand. There's about 50 to 70 manual labor hours in assembly of each pistol, of its testing, making sure everything works, fitting the grips, going to the range, firing about 100 rounds through each gun to make sure it is not ammunition sensitive. So these first 3 years of running of production was very much a custom built manual fitting hard work process. The average pistol sale was about $8,900. There were target models were closing on 10,000. Baby Lugers were closing on 12,000. Classic models were about 8,500. We moved to a new facility. We were shooting this video in a building that is 5,000 square feet. It has a lot more room. We moved here in August of 2020, and in an attempt to create these pistols with somewhat of a cheaper starting point, to bring them to market closer to high-end 45 1911s. And right now we planning to produce 200 pistols a year. This is our full first year of manufacturing. We upgraded our machines. You all know that pandemic didn't help anybody at all, and us included. We have to deal with delivery dates of our machines being delayed almost by 6 months. We were told one thing, and we actually sold our old CNC machines to clear the room for the new coming equipment, then only to be told by our new supplier that equipment is still in Japan and we can't get it, and then we waited for it for another 4 months, and then it took another month to get it delivered and installed. We were the first two machines on the East Coast of brand new Mazak Easy Smooth controls, to the point where Mazak technicians were in the building for almost a month and a half, fine-tuning the machines and learning the machine, because none of the technicians actually knew the machines and never seen them yet. So we were the first ones on the market. They're 4X machines, very fast, good machines, high tolerance. We are in the process of manufacturing 200 units. We started with making small parts. We're about halfway through the small parts of 200 units each, and we are going to be working on frames and slides next. Our new pistols will be a standard model. I don't have the grips manufactured just yet, but the gun that we're talking about as a base model will not have a grip safety. This will be a regular safety weapon, like an Army issue. It will have a 4 3/4 barrel, like the standard guns were. In every respect, mechanically, it will be very similar. We will eliminate this grip is checkered by hand. This edge is very hard to checker and very hard to fit. So usually they're fitted before they're checkered. We're going to try what they call a Swiss pattern, where about 1/4 of an inch on each side, on the front and the back of the grip, will be smooth, but the rest will be checkered. It will look very similar. Even the grips that don't have any checkering, if the wood is right, it will look just as good. But we're keeping it checkered for a basic model. These serrations on the toggle will be present because they're needed to grip the toggle and open the toggle. But these serrations are purely cosmetical. Germans like to over-engineer things. This is one of those things where it can only be done manually on the manual lathe. So on our basic model, they will be eliminated. We are also contemplating about removing this checkering and maybe magazine catch checkering. We haven't decided on that 100% yet, because these could be done on the machine. Basically, for our base model, right now we're running a special, it's $4,000. Eventually it will grow up to about $5,000. But for a basic gun with Swiss style checkering, with regular grip safety, regular safety and no grip safety, this will be our basic gun. It will cost $5,000. We have on our website all options to build from the basic model, to build it all the way to classic, to have all the features, the grip safety versus standard safety, fully checkered grips. The new models will have salt finish. This particular weapon has a rust blue finish. It's the same as German gun, original German finish. Rust blue takes about a day to put on the gun. Has straw parts, or 5 components on the gun are straw. We're thinking that our base model will have the straw parts because that's a relatively quick process, but the blue on the standard weapon will be more modern, dark black polished blue. There will be less hand polishing of the basic model, so some of the machining marks will remain. So we call it the finish of World War II. If you guys familiar with BYF's S42 Mauser made during World War II Lugers, this is how we're planning to have that weapon look. Some small amount of mechanical machining marks left, black blue finish, possibly straw and small parts, regular standard safety, some safety, and Swiss style pattern grips. And this is going to be our basic model. From that basic model, you could upgrade to a grip safety, you could upgrade to a rust blue finish, you could upgrade to German style numbering. One of the things I forgot to mention on our standard models, we will obviously have to keep the number of the pistol, and we will, and it's going to be right here on the very front of the frame. But our classic models have numbers all over the gun in the commercial style. Your barrel's numbered, your small components are numbered on the outside and the inside, your toggle on this gun is not, but this gun right here, the toggle is numbered. The rest of the numbers on the inside, but they are present. This was done originally by Germans to fit the guns, number the guns, disassemble them, and rust glue them in the batch. And after you rust glue them, obviously guns apart, you need to assemble it back. It's a lot easier, parts are numbered, to throw them back together quicker. We're planning to have our guns come together without much fitting, hoping that numbering will not be necessary by the process. And of course, we could add the numbers to a standard gun to upgrade it to a classic. So by the time you get all the features, fully checkered grips, rust blue, straw, serrations on all the classic style serrations, you get the grip safety, you get the numbering, and everything else done like on the classic, you will be back to our original price point of $8,500. Right now, we're on a special. It's a limited time special of we're asking $4,000 for a weapon, and we're asking for about 8 to 10 months of patience. I do believe that right now we have 4 machines on the floor. 2 machines are new, 2 other machines are slightly used. It's still better than what we had before. Hoping that we can speed up production because we have more spindles running. We have a lot more room right now. We have room to have allocated to specializing processes for bluing, for assembly, for testing, and hoping that we can speed up the process and produce 200 weapons a year, at least for the first year. So you guys are more than welcome to ask any questions, if you have any feedback, any ideas, any customizations that you would like to see on the weapon, please give us a call. We also have holsters for them, which we also forgot to mention. The holsters are made from local hides. They're made by hand, they're stitched by hands by our local craftsmen. We have them fit in the guns perfectly. They do come in a variety of colors, as you can see. So you could, this is replicated in original US Army trials holsters of 1900 model Luger. Very fine stitching, brass clips with brass hardware where the hardware is needed. Very well done. Fitted specifically to our gun. Manufactured for us specifically. Obviously, nobody else on the market has the weapon. And we have a package right now where, if you'd like, the presentation boxes that you see, they fit optional 2 magazines or 1 magazine. They fit a loading tool, a pistol of your choosing of the size. The boxes right now, we have a north side mahogany. Again, a local tree supplier has couple of plants. One of them is in Madagascar, one is Africa. He's got exotic woods of all different types. We have mahogany, we have teak, we've done them from walnut, and we've done them from monkey pine, done them from mango. So the boxes could be pretty much manufactured from any species of wood that you would like. This particular two boxes are mahogany, north side, very dense, very high density mahogany, very nice, holding up very nice to the machine. This is my original design, and Patrick Sweeney from Guns N' Ammo actually suggested this design to be slightly changed. You see this surface is flush. The gun is a little harder to get out of that deep pocket. So we redesigned, as you can see, the new boxes that we produce, they have a recess. So it's a lot easier to get the gun out of the pocket because the pocket is shallower. They will have glass tops on them, acrylic tops rather. And the new package that we offer as well, you can either get what we call bare bones 2020 model, where you have a gun of a basic design, 2 magazines and a loading tool. The other, and that's $4,000. And the other special is for $5,000. You can get the same pistol, bare bones pistol, plus an additional magazine, plus a display box, and the holster. Holsters are handcrafted. They run about $375. Boxes, because of the material used, it's a solid piece of wood. The material and time involved, the box cost is $500. Extra magazines at the current time are $375 or $395 for a magazine, because they're also hard to produce, manually produced magazines in the building. By the way, guys, if I didn't mention before, all the parts for the gun are made in the building. We don't subcontract anything. Everything is made in the building, pretty much starting from screws down to frames, down to barrels and springs. The only thing that we do right now, a subcontract, is we get blanks, barrel blanks from Green Mountain Barrels. We get 1.25" diameter blanks with rifling already present, and we shape the outside form of the barrels. That's the only thing that actually we subcontract out, and we have plans of change on that as well. But right now, this is what's happening with the production. We're gonna try to keep you guys in the loop as far as what parts are being made, how quickly they are being made, and how long before the first guns come off production. As soon as the first frame and slide come off, we will assemble it, we will test it, and we will have another video of that particular model present. So all of these guns that you see here on the table are our previous productions. This one in the old walnut case is our Show Queen. This is number 4, which you've seen in Guns N' Ammo, in Gun Digest, in Ian McCullen's Forgotten Weapon channel, and Tim Harmsman's Military Arms channels. These guys have shot this weapon. This was the gun that we trialed and tested all of our functionality on. So at this particular time, this gun roughly has 15,000 rounds through it, which some of our gun magazine writers did not believe, but believe it, guys. We have people that shot, just Tim Harmsman himself, I believe, shot it, and him and his family shot about 1,000 rounds through this weapon on their backyard, to the point where when he had it, it had about 9,000 rounds through it. And he calls me up and goes, "Eugene, the gun stopped working after 1,000 rounds." I'm like, "Tim, it's probably time to change the springs. It's been about 8,000 before you got it, so now it probably has 9. So I'm like, "I'm gonna send you springs, go change them." And he said, "No, you do it yourself." And so he sent me the gun back. We cleaned the gun. It did look like it had 1,000 rounds through it. Changed the springs and sent the gun back. And the review you see on Tim Harmsman's website is after the gun was had springs changed. So right now, these springs have about 6, maybe 6,500, and have not been changed yet. If you're local, you wanted to come up and see these guns in person, number 4 is always on display in our store in Langhorne, PA. You're more than welcome to visit. If you very interested in the weapon and willing to pay for our time to take you to the range, we could accommodate that. We have a local club, very friendly, very good club, Falls Township Gun and Rod Club. Very friendly people, very good, high quality indoor, outdoor competition ready club, and we could take you to the club a couple of miles down the road. You pay for ammo, you pay for our time just to take you out, maybe $100. We'll take the gun, you'll run the gun, you can test it by all means. We welcome the feedback. We wanted to make this gun popular. The idea behind this price point and the production is to make the gun to compete against 1911s and the other semi-automatics of the like, because it has distinct advantages, especially for competition shooters. And we very much like to have that, to see that, to have people actually use them in competitions and succeed and compete. And if you're a good competition with track record and you wanted to get sponsored by us and shoot from our pistol, that's an option as well. If you have a proven track record, if you like to try it out, by all means, guys, reach out. We might give you a pistol on the loan to run through a competition, and maybe even sell you a gun to compete and to have of your own and customize it to any way or shape or form you like. We make custom grips. We can have grips fitted to your hand. We can make the gun in 45, 10 millimeter, and my next idea is to actually have a pistol designed in 9x25 D-Lon, because the case is a very similar dimension and the gun can withstand any types of pressures. So I believe that 9x25 D-Lon would be a very good idea. So again, we're open to suggestions. We welcome you to the store and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye.